Good morning, everyone.
It will be.
I appreciate everybody being here in person and online. I gave a talk for Rahatsu a couple years ago on the Buddha's origin story, his enlightenment story, as a model for practice. And I thought since we have so many new faces these days that it might be a good thing to revisit. And also, as with most teaching stories, I find every time I come back to it, I gain something new from it. So it's a little bit for me too. The Buddha's awakening story gives us kind of a narrative instruction on practice in a holistic sense, how we comport ourselves in our overall life and practice, but also how we handle individual periods of zazen. So it's some good timing. The current academic consensus is that there was almost definitely a historical person named Siddhartha Gautama, who became known as the Buddha. You can find the Shakya clan where he's from in what is now Nepal. Um, And like most stories from this time period, it's almost definitely embellished, if not mostly mythologized. His story is a little too perfect when you break it down, but it still gives us really good lessons on practice and really good lessons on what's important. So I think it's really, really valuable. So for those that might not be super familiar with the Buddha's story, I'm going to give you kind of a brief summary, and then I'll go into in the individual pieces a little bit more detail. So the historical narrative is that the Buddha was born Siddhartha Gautama. He was a prince to the Shakya clan, and his dad was king, lots of money. And that there was a fortune told at his birth that he would either become a great sage or a great king. And his dad thought, I would really like him to be a great king, so I'm going to give him a super sheltered life so he never feels anything bad, and then he will want to stay in this world. Despite his best efforts, the Buddha snuck out of the palace and he saw what's called the four passing sights. He saw an old person, he saw a sick person, he saw a corpse, and then he saw kind of a mendicant, a wandering monk. And especially if you've never come across any hardship in your life, seeing these things might cause quite the existential crisis, which is what happened. And so, moved by these sights, Siddhartha left his home, including his wife and his newborn child, to try to find the cause and a way to end the suffering of the world. After a bunch of time and a few really awesome experiences, he sat under a tree and had an awakening experience. And then he spent the next 45 years of his life wandering around India teaching until he passed away. That's that's the origin story in a nutshell. So if we go back to the beginning, we have Siddhartha's dad, who's a king who wants his son to feel like this world is nothing but amazing. And he wanted to keep him totally sheltered so that he would never suffer anything hard or bad. And it's the trap of trying to use the world to shelter us from the world, which if you think about it, does not make a whole lot of sense, but that's what we try to do. And we do the same thing if we just get the right house, the right job, the right relationship. We somehow think we will be saved from this world that includes suffering. Somehow we will get this world right, and it will not be the world of suffering, at least for us, right? We want to insulate ourselves from all of this suffering and hardship. And that is a very human response. That is not a bad thing, but it's something we have to pay attention to. Because if you really pay attention to it, you find out it doesn't tend to work too well. So Siddhartha's dad wanted to do this with a walled city that Siddhartha was never allowed to leave. Dancing girls, luxury. He was an amazing athlete who won every sports game he ever played. Um, and we do this with Amazon and video games and technology and airplanes. And even within our meditation, it can be tempting to do this with fantasies or with sleepiness. Both of those are escapes, right? It can be hard to sit and be present for 40 minutes at 6:45 in the morning when your knee hurts or your back is stiff or you just didn't want to get up that early. And sleepiness or fantasies can both sometimes act as escapes from that. And so we just need to come back. Life always makes itself known. In Siddhartha's case, he saw the four sights the sick person, the old person, the corpse, and the mendicant. And I think it's important to really think about when we're shocked by something. This is very dramatic, but we all run into this, whether we get hurt or sick, or someone we love gets hurt and sick, or we lose our job, or something happens in the world and politics that's really, really distressing. It's usually like, bam, it's a shock, right? And so the Buddha, he sees this old person, and he's in the myth never seen an old person before. They even say his dad was dyeing his beard, so there would be no sense of aging, right? And he goes, what is that? And his attendant goes, well, that's an old person. Old age comes for all of us. He goes, even princes, even princes. Oh my God. Goes back to the palace, sneaks out again. And then he runs into a sick person. And in the story, this person is like pneumonia with boils, like they're sick, sick. And in the myth, he has never seen or experienced sickness. So he sees that as like, what is going on with that person? And they're like, that's sickness. Everybody will experience sickness at least once before they die. And again, he says, even princes. They go, yep, even princes. And again, back to the palace. And then he sneaks out again, and then he runs into a corpse. And it's important to remember in India and Nepal at this time, people that handled corpses were very low on the social ladder, right? And they would be taken and they would be cremated, and usually those ashes were put in the river. So it was a very visceral, kind of gross, kind of stinky experience. Like all your senses are going to be assaulted by death. This is not I saw somebody on a slab or on television. This is like all the senses are just being inundated with this experience of death. And as you can imagine, what is going on? They're like, that is death. That will happen to everybody, even you. And again, he goes back. And I think it's really easy to imagine all of these times that the Buddha had this, oh God, went back to the palace. He probably doubled down. More good food, more silk sheets, more dancing girls, more football games that he definitely won every single time. Like, I'm just going to double down on the world saving me from the world. It's a very human response. And it wasn't working because no matter how good that sushi is or how wonderful that those silk sheets are, if you know that you're still going to get old, you're still going to get sick, you're still going to die, at a certain point, it's not going to paper over those cracks anymore. That worldview, it's going to change. And then he sees a wandering mendicant, which is very common at this time. He sees this person in raggedy robes, begging bowl, but they seem happy. Like, how does that make any sense? They have nothing. I have everything. They're doing better than me. What is going on with that? They're coping with this world. They're feeling better than I do, and they don't have any of the things I have. And so he thought, maybe this is another path that I need to explore. If being rich and sheltered isn't working, maybe I got to go do something else. And I think in our own lives, the truth of dukkha and samsara make themselves known, no matter how much we try to fight it. Our culture is really good. We have makeup, and we have now beauty filters on our cell phones, and we have plastic surgery, and we have hospitals where people go, and we have care facilities where we have less of the generations taking care of parents or grandparents. We as a culture, we really try to insulate ourselves from old age, sickness, and death, right? We do that quite a bit. And even within all of that, those seeds of unsatisfactoriness, they make themselves known because using the world to protect yourselves from the world, it just doesn't make any sense. So I feel like, much like the Buddha, we get to a point where we have to face the reality in front of us. If we're lucky and we pay attention to the distress in the world, we can, like the Buddha, see the mendicant, see another path, something different. We get the inspiration to practice, which is probably what brought all of you here today. This part of us that sees and feels the inspiration of practice is the innate wisdom that we all carry within us. Even if you feel like the most clueless, unwise person ever, something brought you to practice. That's the innate wisdom, even if you don't feel super connected to it. Otherwise, you'd all be asleep right now. Mm-hmm. And so even within a round of Zazen, if we pay attention to the stillness, we can be inspired to try again and again and again, moment by moment, even when we get knocked off center. But it's inspired. It's not guilt or judgment. It's not, I suck at Zazen. I need to try harder. It's stillness. I'm going to come back. All right. Like we just said, Daijaku says Zazen is win-win. You're still, or you come back with a compassionate mind. So you get to practice stillness or compassion or both for that whole 40-minute period. Doesn't matter if you come back 80,000 times. It's just 80,000 instances of compassion. So the next step in the Buddha's life, after kind of having this existential crisis, probably several times, and then seeing maybe an alternative path, is renunciation. It's leaving his privileged life and family, cutting off his hair, which is very important, very symbolic, and becoming a mendicant. It's really important to note that he says he's doing this for everyone. This is, I think, the first really clear indication of the Bodhisattva path. This aspect of the Buddha's story has always been very challenging. He left his wife and newborn child. A few years ago, I was in the role of a caretaker for a small child, and that child was like a daughter to me, and then I lost her. And when I revisited this story after that, I thought to myself, I could never be that strong to leave. Like I couldn't do it. Right? Rather than making me feel judgmental towards this part of the story, I thought, how difficult would that be? And I thought I couldn't do it because I don't talk about it much, but I think about her every day. And most of the time I think I would give anything to spend one more day at the park or the beach or pushing her in a Safeway shopping cart, right? And then I think, would I give up even that if I could guarantee that she would be okay? And I think, yes, I would. And so if we think that enlightenment is about ourselves, then this is a really selfish move by Siddhartha. If the Bodhisattva path is real to us, if we understand that we are doing this for all beings, that enlightenment is not about you. This is a very different way to relate to this story. I think about the immigrants that came to this country and they had to leave their family behind, or people that go to war and they think, I might never see my wife or my husband or my children again. I'm going to go do this thing no matter how much it hurts because I believe it will cause their life to be better. That is a very different way to relate to this part of the story. And so to me, this is the first kind of black and white indication that enlightenment is not about Siddhartha, because he went and visited them and he said, I do this for everybody. No matter how much it hurts, I'm going to save everybody. Right? But it's not martyr practice. He didn't leave himself out of it. He's like, nobody could work through Siddhartha's salvation but Siddhartha. But he understood it wasn't just about him. Right? And so when we look at this as an instruction for our own practice, it doesn't mean we all have to leave our families and go live in a monastery or go wander the dusty roads of India. But it is symbolic of the changes and the challenges that we might have to deal with in practice. Just as the Buddha left his comfortable home and routines that he knew, we have to be able to let go in the comfort and routines of our own life or our own mind. We can't make changes without giving something up. We can't expect to have the same habits of life or thought and also make big changes in our lives. It doesn't work that way. And that can be really hard and scary. Creating something new always includes giving something up. That's the way of things. And it's okay to feel the grief and loss of the things that we let go of. That's part of it. That's part of this life. Like the Buddha, we have to try to have the courage to make these changes and take these hard steps for what we feel is the most important aspect of our lives. Hopefully, for most of us, it's as simple as, man, I really want to hit snooze on the alarm, but I have to get up and go to the Zendo. Or, man, I really want to tell that person to go to hell, but I'm trying to follow the precepts, so I'm going to try to use some better speech. For some of us, we do get up and go to the monastery for a while. That's okay. But it's important that we examine our habits of life and our habits of mind and see where we maybe need to work on some things a little bit with compassion. Because you're still in there. It's not martyr practice. We're making changes for our benefit as well as everybody else. Very important. So the next phase we hear about is the Buddha studying with a few different masters and having a variety of special experiences. So the Buddha, Siddhartha, he cut off his hair. Now he's a monk. He exchanged his fancy golden robes with the jewels with his attendant, and he takes the little robes and off he goes. And he was, by all accounts, a spiritual prodigy. He's just one of those people that got it, right? And so historically, we have kind of like two masters that are linked to Siddhartha. The first is Alara Kalama, and he mastered a meditative state called the sphere of nothingness, right? And this is kind of a trance state, meditative state. And according to the story, he got it so well that Alara was like, "You should stay here and be my co-teacher of this spiritual community that's engaging in this practice." But he left that one and he went to another community uh, and became a student of, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, Udaka Ramapuda. And under this, he reached an even higher state called the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. And Ramapuda said, "You're even better than me. You should take over this spiritual community, spiritual prodigy." And in both of those, the Buddha said, these states that I'm attaining are powerful. But when I'm done meditating, I'm still a human with all those same human problems I had before. And I'm still upset about this whole old age sickness and death thing. So I'm not getting the answer that I feel like I need by achieving these states. And so I'm gonna keep searching. But I really think it's important that the reality of these experiences is not denied or minimized. I think in Soto Zen in particular, we are sometimes allergic to talk about powerful experiences in Zazen. And I think usually it's because they can be a trap, right? You can get really fixated on having these powerful experiences and you start to think that they're the point of meditation, or you start to elevate yourself or put down other people, or you can go a little wacky if your ethical precepts are not in line. But they are real and they are important and they are part of practice. I've always seen them as an essential stage of practice. These experiences, they inform us, they inspire us, but they're not the end point, right? The Buddha said that he ultimately wasn't satisfied with these states of mind or experiences because he always kept coming back to this human existence. And he was still caught in suffering. I think it's worth noting in the legend that after the Buddha attained enlightenment, he went back to find these teachers. He wanted to share what he had experienced. Both of these teachers had been elderly when he found them, and so both of them had passed away by the time he came back. But this shows that he considered these teachers and these teachings and these experiences an important part of his path. He honored them and that part of his path by going back and trying to share. If it wasn't important, if he thought they were bad, he wouldn't have bothered trying to go back and share, right? So we don't have to minimize experiences that we have. We just don't want to get caught in them either. And I think this is really relevant for us. I think a lot of people, and I'm just going to speak for myself, certainly me, come to this spiritual or meditation practice thinking we're going to have a special experience and this will be enlightenment and all of my problems will magically go away. I'm enlightened, it's all good. This story teaches us not to get stuck on these experiences. They're real, they're valuable, but they're not the point. So if these experiences arise, we understand that the work continues. I've been asked a couple of times, like, oh, what is realization really? Or what is like enlightenment or what? And I always say it's realization and integration. If you have a cool woo-woo experience and then you still yell at people in the grocery store, I feel like something's not quite right, right? So it's realization and integration. And that's why the precept practice is so important. So if these experiences arise, we understand that the work continues and we can integrate them into our daily life. Even within a period of Zazen, it's okay when these experiences arise, but we try not to fixate on them or chase them when they arise or when they dissipate. Because that's the thing about any experience. It arises, it dissipates. And if you have a powerful, blissful experience in Zazen, And then it kind of naturally does what these things do, and then you chase it. Oh God, it's just like chasing what you're going to plan for dinner, right? It might feel more powerful, but you're essentially still getting stuck, right? So what the Buddha realized, either consciously or unconsciously at this point, is that turning into something else or running away from the world into some special experience was not the point. That the liberation he was looking for was right here in this world. You don't have to go somewhere else. You don't have to turn into something else. So the Buddha in this part of the story gives us a good example of honoring these special experiences. That's why he went back to those old teachers, but also not getting stuck in them because he kept going. After working with teachers who focused on these kind of different types of special states, the Buddha went hardcore asceticism. He thought to himself, maybe my physical body's the problem. That's what's getting in my way. So I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to starve myself. I'm not going to bathe. I'm going to just be the most hardcore of anybody. And he nearly died of starvation. The legend is that he was subsisting on like 3 grains of rice a day, and that even the other ascetics around him were like, "Dude, that's pretty hardcore." So he went the furthest because if he's a spiritual prodigy, he probably is going to do that with everything he tries, right? Um, After almost dying, he came to the conclusion that the middle path was actually the way to go, right? Being a super rich, pampered guy didn't work out. Almost dying of starvation didn't work out. So maybe something in the middle. And the most common kind of historical metaphor is the lute string, right? You tighten the string just tight enough that it plays in tune. If it's too slack, it just kind of flops around and doesn't play. And if you tighten it too much, it snaps. So clearly, we need just the right amount of tension, right? That's the kind of famous historical metaphor. And I think this is an important instruction for us because meditation or spiritual practice should not be a stick we beat ourselves with. And this is a super common trap. We can do this in life. Oh, I'm a terrible Buddhist. I got mad at that person that cut me off. Oh, I'm a terrible Buddhist. I did tell that person to go to hell. Now I have to go to apologize, but I don't want to. I'm terrible, right? All that kind of stuff. And even in a period of zazen, I thought about lunch again. I suck. I can't do this zazen thing. I thought about the things I have to do tomorrow when I get home. I'm terrible. Or I did get sleepy. Oh, I'm the worst. I can't do zazen. Uh, Jacqueline Shinshu tell stories all the time about people finding them in grocery stores that came to Ocean Gate or San Francisco Zen Center once or twice and come up to them and go, I just haven't been back because I can't meditate because I have thoughts. I'm like, that's how it works. Yeah. But that's a really easy judgment to fall into, right? Absolutely. And my particular trap is, do we engage in assessing zazen, right? You have this like, I call it floating head Zen. Am I thinking? What about now? Is my posture good? What about now? Right? And that can become its own trap where you're assessing your zazen the entire time you're sitting zazen, right? Super easy. And I never assess my zazen and think, wow, I'm really getting it. I always assess my zazen and think, man, I'm terrible at this. So it takes us off the path. And it also means that sometimes we make unhealthy choices. Like, do I refuse to use a support cushion or sit in a chair, even though I'm in terrible pain, right? That's an easy trap. Do we judge ourselves against others? Oh, Sue's been practicing for 40 years. She never moves. And clearly she never thinks during zazen. Like, right? Or this posture is so good, I'll never sit full lotus, right? So that's not so good. And at the same time, do we have enough discipline, right? The lute string. Do we have just enough to get us to the zazen, right? Because we don't want to hit the snooze too many times and then we don't make it. That's no good. So we have to have enough tension, enough discipline to get up and make it to the zendo. But we don't want to turn it into a stick we beat ourselves with. Do we reset when we find ourselves getting sleepy or having fantasies? Not with a harsh mind, but just, oh, okay, come back, right? Do we actually do our best to walk the middle path? So after doing this for only 6 years, because Siddhartha was a spiritual prodigy, he sits down under a tree and says, that's it. I am not getting up until I have realization. I'm done. And so, at least in one of the legends, he sat for 49 days straight. This is a good example and instruction for determination and perseverance. In practice, as we move through life, even within a period of zazen, when we feel like we have to get up right now. Sometimes it's really hard to just stay. Just stay. That's why it's often said that sitting with a group is in some ways easier. Because when you're home by yourself, it can be like, oh, the laundry, oh, the email I have to send, right? In in a group, there's that very, very subtle, very loving social pressure to keep your butt on the cushion, right? You got to stay. So the Buddha stayed. For whatever in those 49 days, whatever challenges he felt, the Buddha stayed. And then Mara makes himself known. Mara in Buddhism is the demon of kind of ego and delusion, right? Obviously, we all have our own internal Mara, and Mara is sometimes called the architect, right? We are all the architect of our false understanding, our false self, our false egocentric view. That's us. When Mara recognized that Siddhartha was on the verge of waking up to see the truth of his domain, right, this world, he took immediate actions to prevent this kind of nonsense from happening. He's like, no realization for you, right? He brought his three beautiful daughters, craving, aversion, and passion to seduce Siddhartha. I want to point out that this is a legend that is told in a heteronormative worldview. Women are not any more or less seductive than anything else. Maybe if it was a different story, Mara would have sent his three beautiful sons. This is just how the legend is told in a heteronormative culture. So, but we have these three beautiful daughters. And these are the drivers that push and pull us around. Craving is really powerful. We can have a desperate desire or want for something that blows every other thought from our mind. It can become our whole worldview and it can rock our center when we don't get it. And this can happen with really little stuff, like you haven't eaten all day, you get in the house and you're like going to rip the door off the fridge, right? Or you've been working outside and suddenly you realize you are so thirsty, you are going to die right now if you don't get that glass of water, right? Craving. And of course, with love and relationships or position, like all of that craving, anything that can hijack us and make us feel like we have to get that thing, right? It's craving. And the same can be true for aversion. We can be disgusted, hate, or fear so many different things. And it's very easy to build our whole lives around avoiding these unpleasant feelings. I hate that person, and they're always in the break room at this time. I will never go to the break room at this time. Except what do you do when that person's in a meeting? Or they went to the break room at a different time and there they are. If all you've done is try to build your world around avoiding everything you dislike, then maybe we don't have a lot of stability when we inevitably come face to face with something we don't like. Even if it's not that person or situation, there's going to be another one, right? But man, it can feel so important. And disgust is like, that's a visceral feeling, right? Disgust. And that can happen with situations, it can happen with what's going on in the world of politics or things that we see online, all kinds of stuff, right? Just aversion is very powerful. Passion is similar, and passion can be love or hate. Passion can make us lose control. It can blind us to everything but what drives us. Passion can allow us to do great things, and it can cause us to do terrible things. It's also very seductive. I think maybe even more than craving or aversion, passion can feel so good, right? This is, passionate love, passionate care, but also I'm very suspicious of the feeling of righteousness when I know I'm right, and therefore I get to do anything I want because I know I'm right. That's passion, right? And we can naturally want to feed into it. When you know you're right or something feels really good, it's a very natural human instinct. I'm just going to feed more into that rather than experiencing it, but trying to stay mindful. Or I think passion is it. Maybe I'm overgeneralizing. Maybe for some people it is craving or aversion, but certainly for myself and for most people I talk to, passion is the trickiest because it's the one that feels the most acceptable to feed into. So day to day with the cause or issues that catch us, or with our rehearsing and rehashing thoughts within a period of zazen. That can happen. If you have something you're really passionate about in zazen, you can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan how you're going to do that thing or deal with that thing or fix that thing, right? Or you're going to rehash something that already happened, right? Just going to go over that. I'm going to replay that conversation over and over and over and over and over again. Maybe I'll fantasize about how I could have fixed it or said some stuff better. But that's passion. When this doesn't knock the Buddha off the center, Mara himself appeared before Siddhartha, accompanied by a large army, including monstrous demons wielding powerful and deadly weapons. And with these, the Buddha did not counterattack or push away. This is very important. He sat rooted and understood Mara to be Mara. He just said, Mara, I see you. This is really important. This is another easy trap to want to be destructive. One of my tattoos is a quote from the book Zen Master Raven. And in this story, Badger goes to Raven and says, I feel really stupid. I come to Zen practice every day and I'm sitting and other people are asking really smart questions. They seem like they're getting it. And I just feel really dumb and I'm not getting anything. And Raven says, well, Mara is prodding you. Mara is prodding you. And Badger says, well, it hurts. And Raven says, that's the only way he knows. And for me, because I have a very strong internal Mara, I have a very strong internal critic. What I took from that is I could hate Mara. I could push against Mara. I could do my best to destroy Mara. And what am I going to do? I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to compound my own suffering. Or I can recognize Mara as Mara. And that's it. I don't have to feed into it, but I don't have to hate it. The Buddha did not hate Mara. This is really difficult. We want to hate delusion. We want to hate suffering. And why not? Sometimes we suffer so much, we think surely we're going to die. And sometimes we suffer so much, we're like, oh, just get on with it. Right? It's easy to hate suffering. How do we not hate suffering? This takes real stability and strength. But Buddha understood the Buddha nature, this functioning of the world, includes everything, what we call enlightenment and what we call delusion. It's a very different way of relating. Mara claimed that according to the Dharma, the seat of enlightenment belongs to the greatest and only the greatest, and that should be him, right? Mara's soldiers cried out, Mara is the best. And they said, we witness, the soldiers, right? So all these delusional thoughts are like, we witnessed that you're the best, right? This is the demon of ego. You're the best. And then Mara says, who are you to wake up? And in the story, the Buddha just reached down and touched the earth. And in the legend, the earth rumbles, I bear you witness. And so the earth, reality itself, bears witness of the Buddha's realization. And the earth is not separate. So the world bears witness to the world. Buddha bears witness to Buddha. It's all one. I think of this as imposter syndrome. I think usually when we talk to people and we say, who here feels like a Buddha? I don't get a lot of hands raised when I ask that, right? But touching the ground is so important. We rely on what is most important, which is our fundamental nature. We're not separate from the earth. We're not separate from Buddha nature. We touch the earth, which is us, and also bigger than us, over and over and over again. As practice gets hard, we just touch the earth over and over and over again. While remembering the middle path. We don't want to lose that, right? If you're touching the earth with, you suck, you better, no, right? We touch the earth just like that, just, okay. And then the Buddha, at this point, Mara just gives up. He's done. And then the Buddha stands up and he says, I and the morning star are one. Some translations are a little different, but this is pretty standard. I and the morning star are one. This is different than, I got enlightened. It's not what he said. He said, I and the morning star are one. And I want you to go all the way back to when he left his wife and child. He said, I'm gonna figure out the answer for all beings. This is connected, but it's a little different. One of the first examples I was given when I started studying Zen, the difference between the Bodhisattva path and the Arhat path, which is sometimes a little unfairly called the individual path, is that the Arhat is walking through the desert. This is the world of samsara, and they see a walled oasis, and they climb and they look like, it's oasis, woohoo, and they jump in, and they have achieved their liberation, they're done, right? And the Bodhisattva is walking through the desert, and they see the walls, and they go and they peek in, and they go, oh, it's an oasis, and they run out to the road, and they start waving other people in, and they're putting off their own realization to save all people. And it's a good analogy, but it's a little shallow because if you are interconnected with all beings, then working through your own salvation by necessity includes all beings. You don't have to pick. It's not martyr practice. Waking up with all beings means waking up with all beings. So Siddhartha, when he recognized that he and the morning star are one, that included his wife and child and all other beings. He was working on realization for all beings, not just himself or not him and some other separate people that he liked. All beings, not separate. So this brings us all back full circle. So special states are great, but escaping from the world isn't it. We are liberated, as Daijaku says, to the world rather than from it. Mara, not the opposite, not something to deny or destroy or run away from. Reality as it is, all things included, enlightenment and delusion. The earth as reality bears witness, verifies. We wake up in this reality, to this reality, as this reality. If we remember we are waking up with all beings, I find that this can lead to gratitude. Something interesting about the human condition that almost every time we give, we end up experiencing gratitude. Have you noticed that? We go and we take care of other people and it feels really good. Right? That's an interesting quirk of humanness. And this includes us. We give to ourselves as well. So we navigate this life in practice, we can come back to the ground over and over again. And we can remember that now we are not working for our enlightenment or salvation, but all beings. And in this way, this statement becomes a mission statement. And finally, the Buddha goes back out into the world and he teaches. The story doesn't end with this enlightenment experience. Rather than succumbing to Mara's last trick, because he did have one more, he said, "Oh, your enlightenment is so amazing. Nobody else is going to get it. Trying to teach is a waste of time. You should just pass into parinirvana right now. You got it, but it's so elevated, right? This is a good trick. And I feel like many people can get caught in this one. If enlightenment, my enlightenment, is so special, I can elevate myself. Nobody else will have my special state. Or we can give it to others, we can take it away. I think sometimes this is again why the integration is so important. If you get caught in the my enlightenment, my special state, this is sometimes when you see people go a little wacky, right? They embezzle money, sleep with students they shouldn't, have just kind of engage in kind of some weird stuff. People can have legitimate, powerful experiences and not be grounded with it. It can become problematic, right? And so I think this is kind of a final instruction from Mara. Oh, you're so great. You should no, you're the world. Engaging in this world, practice does not exist in a vacuum. We get up off the cushion and we try to live in accordance with all beings. In this world, we engage, we practice in relationship, we walk the ground, the same ground that bore us witness. Even in Zazen, we align our body with the cushion and the environment. It's still an interactive event. Even if you're sitting at home by yourself, you're not sitting alone. We practice where we are with what's in front of us. The Buddha's awakening story might or might not be literally true, but it's a really good instruction story. And remembering these teachings, especially when we're stuck, is another way we can rely on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And this story represents all of these things. Thank you.